Since the launch of the Nintendo Switch Online service all the way back in 2018, fans have been clamoring for certain updates to the service. This includes things like dedicated servers, more stable connections, and other things that should be no-brainers for a paid online service. That said, if this really is what we're stuck with technically for the remainder of the Nintendo Switch's life, then the main thing I'd like to see from the service is more support for legacy Nintendo games and systems. So in this video, let's have a bit of fun. Let's make up our own dream lineup for a potential N64 section of Nintendo Switch Online. After all, this seems like it should be obvious after the NES and SNES sections. Let's put together the best lineup of games we can to represent the N64's glorious 90s heyday. Let's roll. Okay, so, the SNES and NES online services both launched with about 20 games each. It would be pretty easy to expect an identical number for N64 games, however, considering the added complexity of the console's lineup and the bigger file size of the games, I think narrowing that lineup a little bit is certainly justifiable. So let's go with 12 games to start with and assume that more would be added later. With our number of games decided, let's narrow our options. A notable trait of the SNES and NES services is the lack of licensed games. They were certainly present on both systems, with things like the Game Show games on NES and a whole plethora on SNES, but they are noticeably absent from the online service. As such, we'll sadly be pruning any potential licensed games from this list. I say sadly because the N64 truly was home to some of the best licensed games ever made. Stuff like the Star Wars games, the WWE games, the sports games, and of course GoldenEye 007. We'll give all of these games a fair honorable mention and limit this list strictly to things that originated from gaming. That said, let's continue. So putting Mario 64 on this list is already a bit of a weird choice, mainly because it's currently available for purchase on the Mario 3D All-Stars bundle. Why would Nintendo put one of their flagship games on a service that's effectively free for a year after a single $20 purchase, when they could just sell it for... Oh, that's right. Yes, I think it's all too likely that Nintendo will drop this game in some sort of downloadable form after the death of the Mario 3D All-Stars pack, with it being easily the most visible game on N64 and one of the most important games of all time and all that. I'd say its inclusion would be all but assured. Also, if Nintendo does include it, please make it the original release with the BLJs and all that. Thank you. From one obvious pick to another, we have a game that's commonly regarded as one of the, if not the single best of all time. Now, I'm not as into Ocarina of Time as most others, but even I can't deny its everlasting appeal and importance in the video game landscape. Nintendo releasing a downloadable legacy service without access to Ocarina of Time would be like a modern console releasing without a port of Skyrim. It would just feel incomplete. Give all of these nostalgic Nintendo boomers and cynical Nintendo zoomers a chance to re-experience this classic Nintendo. You will not regret it. You know you struck gold as a developer when fans continually claim that one 20-year-old entry in your series is the absolute real way the series should be designed. Case in point, Star Fox 64. This is one of my personal favorite games on the system and easily among my most nostalgic games, period, so getting a chance to play through its short but wondrous spacefaring levels on modern platforms would be a dream come true. But what about the SNES online versions, you ask? They just make me wonder what could be. And what about Star Fox 64 3D though? Shut up. Leave me alone. Now here's a game I'm all too familiar with. With new Pokemon Snap releasing on Switch later this year, I think giving players a chance to experience the game that inspired it all over 20 years ago would be a great way to ease them into the new game and demonstrate the legacy of the concept. Give all of those contrarian Nintendo fans who've never got a chance to experience this classic first-hand exposure to it, and I guarantee you they'll immediately understand why people clamored for a sequel for over 20 years. Would also give them exposure to Professor Oak's infamous grading system, which is similar to working retail, and that I think everyone should experience it at least once. Now, I know what you're wondering. Why would they put the original Super Smash Bros. On Switch when the definitive edition to the series is already available on the console? And my answer is exactly that. Having both the original and ultimate installments in this legendary series playable on a single console would be a great way to reflect on the series' legacy, being able to compare and contrast and see just how we got from this to this. Plus, the original Smash is still absolutely worth playing these days and has plenty of merit. It really isn't like any other Smash game that's released. It also doesn't have young Link, which makes it an automatic pick in my book. This is what I like to call the Mario spin-off hour for this video, where we spend the next 3 entries talking about games that are related to Red Luigi in some way while not being main series entries, starting with my dream. Paper Mario for the N64 is my favorite game ever made. I literally just made a half-an-hour-long deep dive explaining why that you can watch here, but in short, it's a brilliantly made and legendary game that holds up remarkably well, featuring an amazing battle system, great music, and effortlessly charming presentation. Plus, the Switch is the first Nintendo console since the GameCube not to feature feature a downloadable version of Paper Mario somewhere, so I'd say it's time to give the Paper Boy his dues. Don't keep him from modern fans. The N64 Mario parties have a bit of a reputation for being both the best and most brutal games in the series. Between 1's painful, palm-scratching minigames, 2's chance time and brutal luck, and 3's threeness, these are games that have more than earned their reputations as rigorous friendship-testing experiences. And while I couldn't personally see the Switch's Joy-Cons handling 1's minigames terribly well, pretty much a one-way ticket to Joy-Con drift, putting any of these 3 games up for a downloadable service would be a good kick in the pants for all of the people who've fallen into the relative comfort of Super Mario Party. Just, be careful on your control stick. And to close off our Mario spin-off section, let's talk about the original granddaddy of kart. I know, Super Mario Kart exists and is already on the downloadable service, but I'm pretty sure most of us have way more memories with Mario Kart 64. Despite being in a similar position to Smash Bros, where the definitive edition of the series is already available on Switch, Mario 64 is still a decidedly unique and worthwhile entry to the series. Just take a look at its speedrunning community. And if not for anything else, it'd be a nice hit of nostalgia for us jaded 20 to 30 something Nintendo fans and loads of other people as well. For whatever reason, there is an abundance of puzzle game spin-offs on the Nintendo Switch Online service between things like Panel de Pon and Mario's Picross. And while these games might be nostalgic to Japanese players and novel for overseas players, the game I'm sure a lot of us got to experience as kids was definitely Pokemon Puzzle League. It's a pretty bog-standard Tetris Attack game these days, but the added Pokemon content and nostalgia factor make it a standout entry in this surprisingly illustrious series. Plus, it's one of the only Pokemon video games to prominently feature characters from the anime, which gives it its own unique flair. It might not be Pokemon Stadium or Pokemon Snap, but this is still one N64 Pokemon game I'd love to revisit. I deliberately avoided talking about this one until late in the video because I knew it'd start some interesting discussions in the comments. Banjo-Kazooie. Yes, Sakurai did urge us to buy Xboxes to play it, but Nintendo and Microsoft have been buddy-buddy for quite a while now, and Banjo's inclusion in Smash was apparently widely celebrated on both sides. I personally think it's entirely possible for Microsoft to allow this game to hit a service like Nintendo Switch Online, especially since its availability on Xbox is also through a paid compilation of several games. I'm not sure if I'd like to see something like Blast Corps or Conker's Bad Fur Day or anything on here, but I just can't imagine a Nintendo 64 lineup without Banjo, y'all. And for this second to last entry, let's get a little weird. Rayman 2 is a game that I commonly see regarded as one of the best games of all time and among the greatest 3D platformers ever made. It's been ported to a whole bunch of consoles, so why not make one of those the Switch? This is actually a game I've never gotten a chance to play, but I have loads of friends who are crazy nostalgic for this game, and considering its legacy and history, I'd love to give it a chance on what's currently the most convenient platform available. Rayman might not be a big name these days, but he used to be top dog in the platforming scene, right alongside Mario and Crash Bandicoot. Remember, no limbs, huge features. Kirby 64 is great. It's one of the best games in the Kirby series, and if you think otherwise, I'm sorry about your invalid opinions. Its blend of interesting levels, great music, and the amazing ability to combine copy abilities make it easily one of the most standout and well-aged games on the N64. This is one of those classic examples, kinda like Star Fox 64, where I feel like even further in the future, no games in the series have really stood up alongside this one. It might not be as visible of an N64 standout as something like Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, but it's still special to me, dang it, and I'd love to see it hit the Nintendo Switch in some capacity. And there it is, my lineup for a potential hypothetical N64 online service. If you've got any games you'd add, let me know in the comments. That's what's great about the N64. It was such a widely used console that so many people have different memories of games they played on it. Some honorable mentions for this video include Space Station Silicon Valley, Rocket Robot on Wheels, and a whole bunch of other weird, obscure N64 platformers I'm sure you've seen Nitro Grad review. I'd also like to give honorable mentions to games like Wave Race 64, which I sadly don't know enough about to have included it on the list. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, because those are just really classic games that I don't think would really work on Switch due to their reliance on importing Pokemon from the GBA games, and again, all of the licensed games we had to chop off at the beginning of this video. I know the N64 was a bit of a licensed game machine, and a lot of the best games on it happened to be licensed, so having to chop them all off was pretty difficult, but I did it to keep this video in line with other Nintendo Switch online services. Regardless, I hope this list checked all of your boxes in the same way that it did mine. Anyways, thanks for watching, hope y'all have a fantastic day before, during, and after, and I'll catch y'all later. Thanks and cheers.